Last night, the Pentagon moved to send between 2,000 and 3,000 U.S. Army paratroopers from the 82nd Airborne Division into the Middle East as the fight around Iran and the Strait of Hormuz keeps getting more dangerous. That part is real. What is not confirmed is some Hollywood version where 3,000 airborne troops have already launched a full assault near the strait. The reporting right now points to rapid deployment, not a confirmed ground attack. And honestly, that may be even more important, because this move tells you Washington wants options fast. Not next month, not after another committee meeting. Fast. Reuters partner reporting, NPR affiliate reports, Bloomberg, AP, and the Washington Post all say the administration has ordered or is preparing to order thousands of 82nd Airborne troops to the Middle East as the Hormuz crisis deepens. And this matters for three reasons. First, the 82nd Airborne is not the unit you move when you're trying to look relaxed. You move them when you need speed, deterrence, and the ability to react if the situation gets worse quickly. Second, the Strait of Hormuz is not just another patch of water. It is one of the most important energy choke points on Earth, so every military move there carries economic shockwaves far beyond the Gulf. Third, this deployment suggests the White House wants a force package that can do more than posture. It wants troops ready for contingencies if shipping, bases, or regional partners come under heavier pressure. Current reporting says the troops would add to roughly 50,000 U.S. personnel already in the region, while officials weigh options tied to the Iran war and the Hormuz crisis. That is the real story here. Not America already invaded. Not World War III started this morning. The real story is that the United States is building the kind of military flexibility you build when the next step might have to be taken in hours, not weeks. And if you understand what the 82nd Airborne actually represents, that should get your attention immediately. Because these are not random troops. This is the kind of force the Pentagon leans on when it wants a unit that can move fast into unstable environments, seize ground if required, reinforce vulnerable positions, protect key facilities, or send a signal that the next escalation will not be answered slowly. The Wall Street Journal said deploying these troops would give President Trump more strategic options, while other reporting says division elements linked to the immediate response force are involved. That's your first heartbeat. This is not a symbolic deployment. It is an options deployment. And that distinction matters because a lot of people look at troop numbers and miss the real question. The real question is not just how many troops. It is what kind of troops move for what kind of timeline, into what kind of crisis. Now let's anchor the exact scene fast so nobody gets lost. The current reporting says the Pentagon has ordered or is preparing to deploy roughly 2,000 to 3,000 paratroopers from the 82nd Airborne Division to the Middle East as the Trump administration weighs how to respond to Iran's pressure around the Strait of Hormuz. Bloomberg reported about 2,000 troops. NPR affiliate reporting and public radio partner coverage described between 2,000 and 3,000. AP said at least 1,000 from the 82nd were preparing to deploy. The Washington Post reported several thousand paratroopers were being sent as broader U.S. planning continues. So no, the clean factual version is not 3,000 troops rushed to attack. The clean factual version is more serious than that. 3,000 airborne troops are being rushed toward a crisis zone where an attack could become one of several available options. That's a much smarter way to understand it. Because reason number one is speed. The 82nd Airborne is built for moments when leaders don't want to be caught flat-footed. If the strait gets harder to reopen, if U.S. positions need reinforcement, if allies or bases need protection, or if a sudden operation becomes necessary, these are the kinds of troops you want already in theater or close enough to matter. The New York Post summary, while less authoritative than AP or Bloomberg, still captured the core reality accurately here. This unit is prized for fast mobilization and crisis response. More credible reporting from the Post and Bloomberg also points to the same basic logic. This is about strategic readiness under pressure. Here's the concrete example. The Washington Post reported that the deployment comes as Trump considers broader options in the conflict, including potential operations tied to Iranian territory and infrastructure, and that the 82 Indies Rapid Response Brigade and headquarters elements are part of the discussion. The Washington Post 5. And here's the punchline. When Washington sends airborne troops this fast, it is not because the map got calmer overnight. It is because the menu of bad options is getting longer. That's reason one. Reason two is the location. The Strait of Hormuz is one of those places that sounds abstract until you realize how much of the world economy can feel it when something goes wrong there. Around 1/5 of the world's oil consumption has historically moved through the strait, and even the threat of disruption there can hit energy markets, shipping insurance, and political nerves. Current reporting says the administration is trying to address Iran's chokehold on the strait while also circulating ceasefire ideas, which tells you the military move and the diplomatic move are happening in parallel, not in sequence. That's the concrete anchor for reason two. This is not just a military problem. It is a global pressure point, which means every troop movement there gets read in three ways at once. Militarily, as preparation. Politically, as intent. Economically, as a warning that the cost of instability is rising. And this is where people mess up the analysis. They think a deployment like this means the White House has already picked one final path. Not necessarily. Sometimes deployments are there to avoid a worse outcome by making a threat look more credible. Sometimes they are there to support evacuation or base defense. Sometimes they are there because leaders want force ready before they decide exactly how much of it they will actually use. That's why this is so tense. Because troops like this are about leverage as much as combat. Mini recap. So far, the picture is simple. 1. The 82nd Airborne means speed. 2. Hormuz means the stakes are global. Now reason 3. This deployment expands Trump's room to act. And whether you support him or hate him, that is the point you cannot ignore. Power in a crisis is not just about what you have already done. It is about what everyone else believes you can do next. If the United States only had aircraft and ships in the area, that still matters. But once you start adding rapid response airborne troops to an already large regional military footprint, the picture changes. AP says this move adds to about 50,000 U.S. troops already in the region, plus Marines and Navy forces moving closer. NPR affiliate reporting says the same. The Washington Post says the administration is weighing a range of next moves, and that the airborne deployment would give Trump more flexibility if he chooses to escalate or secure assets more aggressively. That is your concrete example for reason 3. The deployment is not the decision. It is the toolkit before the decision. And the punchline is even cleaner. Troops like these turn a president's threats from words into timelines. That is what makes this so serious. Now, to be fair, there is a counterpoint, and it matters. Sending airborne troops into the region does not automatically mean they will jump into combat near the Strait of Hormuz. There are many possible missions short of a direct assault. Protecting bases, reinforcing deterrence, securing evacuation corridors, backing allied positions, or simply making Iran think twice before widening the fight. The best current reporting does not confirm that 3,000 U.S. troops have already launched an attack near Hormuz. It confirms rapid deployment and planning. That distinction is important because if you exaggerate the facts, you lose the story. And the real story is already big enough. The real story is that Washington appears to be building a layered answer to a crisis that has stopped feeling temporary. Air power, naval power, marine movements, now airborne troops. That is not the posture of a government that thinks this will solve itself with one good press release. It is the posture of a government preparing for multiple branches of the same crisis. And here's where it gets even more interesting. The administration is reportedly doing two things at once, pushing military reinforcement while also floating ceasefire terms. On paper, that can look contradictory. In practice, that is how pressure diplomacy often works. You talk peace while building the force that makes your proposals harder to ignore. NPR affiliate reporting says a 15-point ceasefire proposal has been drafted even as the paratrooper deployment goes ahead. Iranian officials, according to the same reporting, continue denying that negotiations are happening. That should tell you something. This is not a clean war or peace moment. It is a prepare for both moment. And those are the moments when mistakes get expensive. Because if Iran reads the deployment as preparation for a strike, it may respond by hardening positions, threatening shipping, or pushing proxies. If allies read it as a sign the U.S. is about to widen the conflict, they may hedge. If markets read it as a prelude to a prolonged Hormuz fight, prices can move before a single additional shot is fired. That's how much weight this kind of troop movement carries. It bends behavior before it bends territory. Now let's talk about the viral headline version versus the smart version, because this is where a lot of people get trapped. The viral headline says 3,000 airborne troops are rushing to attack near the Strait of Hormuz. The smarter version says 3,000 airborne troops are rushing into a crisis where attack, defense, deterrence, and contingency planning are all now on the same table. That second version is less dramatic in wording, but much more dramatic in substance. Because once airborne troops are moving, the clock changes. The president's options expand. Iran's calculations change. The region's anxiety rises. And the distance between show of force and actual operation gets smaller. That is what people should be watching. Not just the troop count, but the compression of time. When events move this fast, the most important question is no longer, could this escalate? Of course it could. The most important question becomes, what is the next trigger? A mine lane? A hit on a base? A successful strike on a tanker? A missile attack that forces Washington to prove the deployment was not just theater? Those are the danger points now. And this is why the 80-second matters so much psychologically. Their presence tells friends and enemies alike that the U.S. wants a force package that can move from warning to action without a long public delay. That alone can deter. But it can also raise the pressure, because once that capability is in place, every side starts gaming what the other side might do first. That is how crises become self-tightening. Not always because leaders want war, but because every move to prevent being cornered makes the other side feel more cornered too. And if you want one line that explains this whole moment, it's this. The 82nd Airborne is not being rushed toward Hormuz because Washington is calm. It is being rushed because Washington wants to stay ahead of a crisis that may be moving faster than diplomacy. That is the takeaway. So here's the clean finish. The facts right now say the Pentagon is deploying or preparing to deploy roughly 2,000 to 3,000 82nd Airborne troops to the Middle East as the Hormuz crisis deepens. The reporting does not confirm a ground attack has already begun near the strait, but it does confirm something almost as important. The White House is positioning a rapid response force for a moment when the next step could come very quickly. And once airborne troops are on the move, the message is clear. This is no longer just a shipping crisis. It is a live test of how far the United States is willing to go if Hormuz becomes the line it refuses to let Iran hold. So the only question now is this. Is this deployment meant to stop the next escalation, or is it the final setup before the next escalation begins?